Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. I've got my mix of this month's song over at duelingmixes.com pulled up. And I'm going to show you something that has to do with compression and de-essers. Those two can sometimes be at odds, but they're actually very complementary devices. And I'll show you what I mean. Compression is one of those things, when you first start mixing, it can be pretty confusing and frustrating. I talked about this on my email newsletter last week. Sometimes you feel like you're just randomly moving knobs and you don't know when to use compression, and it's hard to know what it even sounds like and why you would even want to use it. But over time, you start to develop an ear for it, and you start to realize that it does a lot of cool things to a lot of different types of tracks. One of those would be the lead vocal. If you're producing any sort of music that falls anywhere near the camp of pop, rock, country, any kind of major popular genres of music, there's a good chance that the lead vocal tone that you want is going to have a heavy dose of compression on it in some capacity. And you shouldn't be afraid to overcompress and see what it sounds like, because sometimes you get really cool tones. And that's what I want to show you here today. So here's the lead vocal. It's kind of a chill song with a really great lead vocal sound. And I've got my vocal running through a bus right here. And these are my plugins that I have on it. And I'll show you some of these. Some of these are irrelevant to what we're talking about today. So here's the dry vocal and a verse that I want to play for you.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
Good sounding voice.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
Kind of got a little soulful vibe to it. It's a little on the darker side. I'd like for it to be brighter and more upfront in all those catchphrases that we like to use. So if we pull up the first plugin that I use, this is the Fat channel from PreSonus. You can see if I turn on the compressor, first let's do the EQ. Got some EQ going on.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
Brightened it up a little bit, took some lows and mids out. That feels great. Now the compression is going to be knocking off probably about 5 to 7 dB of gain reduction.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
So it's a little bit louder, which is not a super fair comparison, but I'm not going to mess with it now. But as you can see, the before and after, if I click this power button on and off, aside from being a little bit louder, you'll notice there's that tightness that we like to hear in a lead vocal. A tightness that allows all the consonants to be heard over a dense mix so that we can hear the vocal clearly, we can understand what he or she is singing, and it sits nicely on top of the mix. Compression is what allows us to do that. So I'll click back and forth between the compressed and uncompressed signals so you can hear the difference.
Typing up a storm, man, Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene. Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene. Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
So the held out notes of the vocal are actually pretty close in volume, but those initial parts of the vocal, the first little blips of the sound of the words that he sings, are louder so we can hear them over a mix like this.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
Okay, so it's not super loud on top of the mix, but it's compressed enough to where we can understand, well, I can't quite understand what he's saying, but you get the idea. We can hear those consonants really well. Now, the problem here, as you've probably already noticed, is there's a good bit of sibilance in his vocal. One of the downsides, when you add a lot of compression to a lead vocal, it does make the consonant sounds come out more clearly, but it can also make the S's and T's and some of those brighter sounds be too bright. Take a listen again to the vocal by itself.
Typing up a storm, man.
Listen to I think that word is storm maybe. Listen to it when I turn the compressor off.
Typing up a storm.
The ST in storm isn't that loud. With the compression, it becomes the loudest thing in the vocal.
Typing up a storm, man.
Really, really loud. That's one of the downsides, drawbacks, artifacts of using compression. Well, to me, it's a really simple solution. I just add some sort of de-esser after the compressor. So if the vocal sounded fine and didn't need de-essing before, I don't do de-essing. And then I added compression, and now it needs a little de-essing. So what I do, I kind of flip back and forth between using a multi-band compressor and this just single-band compressor here. And that's what I've got here. This is a normal compressor, the stock one in Studio One, with the internal sidechain filter engaged to where this compressor is only listening to everything above 6K. So it's only hearing the when they come through. And that's what it's responding to when it compresses the vocal. Really high ratio, really quick attack. It's knocking down the entire vocal whenever those louder, sibilant sounds come through. So here's what that sounds like when it's engaged.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the scene.
Versus.
Typing up a storm, man, you sat in the...
You almost have to turn down the speakers because those S's and T's are chopping your face off. Now with a de-esser,
Typing up a storm and you sat in the scene.
And so some people may argue, and I totally get it, that, okay, why not just use less compression on the lead vocal so you're not having to, quote unquote, fix the excessive sibilance with a de-esser? It's a valid question. I've probably said something along those lines in the past. For me, I love the tone of the compressed vocal so much that I'm willing to add a de-esser to my signal chain to deal with some of the problems that arise because I want that compressed tone. Because the alternative is to go back to the uncompressed vocal without a de-esser, and it just is a little too boring in the mix. Even if we turn it up a little bit volume-wise, certain notes are jumping out, other ones we don't hear at all. It would take forever to try to ride that with automation, and even then, it probably wouldn't sound that great. Instead, let's compress the crap out of it, and then let's use a de-esser if we need that to deal with some of the sibilant problems that arise afterward. Okay? Another thing we did, the compression brought out some kind of upper mid-range ringing in the vocal, so I used an EQ to notch that out after the compressor because the compressor is what brought that out. Another cool thing you can do because of this is you can then come into the vocal and you can actually boost the upper frequencies a little more to give it some air without increasing the sibilance. Here's what that would sound like. I think it's too much in this mix, but here it is for demonstration purposes.
Typing up a storm and you sat in the scene. Typing up a storm and you sat in the scene.
So we can get a lot more brightness out of the vocal, especially maybe on a female vocal, but the de-esser is still in place, smacking it down so those S's and T's don't get louder. Just the rest of the airiness of the vocal comes through a little bit more. So if you're not in the process currently of using a compressor followed by a de-esser if and when the song needs it, don't be afraid to do so, and don't think that it's wrong. You're not creating a problem and fixing it. You're actually making something better, and then you're fixing some problems that occur along the way in the process of making that song better. By the way, if you like this song and you want to mix it yourself, you can. You can actually join Dueling Mixes for a free trial. Head over to duelingmixes.com and read more about that. You can see how I mix the song. You can see how Graham Cochran mixed the song. Then you can also mix the song for yourself. There's a community. There's a way to win some prizes, and there's a monthly Q&A session as well. Super fun. Hope you'll check it out. Otherwise, I'll see you around. Later.
Yeah.